When we think of the perfect warrior, one name still echoes after 2,500 years: the Spartans. These were not just soldiers, they were the weaponized citizens of a state designed entirely for war. From the age of 7, Spartan boys were taken into the Agoge, a brutal training program of controlled starvation and constant violence. Only those who survived until age 20 earned the title of citizen soldier. They lived in barracks until 30, while their wives managed their estates. Their only job was to kill. Their dominance was absolute. At the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC, 300 Spartans and 700 allies held off an estimated 150,000 Persians for 3 days. That kill ratio, roughly 1 to 95, is almost statistically impossible. Their phalanx formation, a wall of overlapping shields and 2.5-meter spears, was impenetrable. But even perfection has a flaw. The Spartans' obsession with genetic purity and exclusivity meant they couldn't replace their losses. After a devastating defeat at Leuctra in 371 BC, their population collapsed from 8,000 to less than 1,000 in a century. They proved that extreme training creates supreme warriors, but societies built only for war eventually run out of them. Facing the Spartans were the Persian Immortals, a unit of exactly 10,000 men. Why Immortals? Because whenever one fell, he was instantly replaced, maintaining the terrifying illusion that the unit could never die. These were the elite guard of the Achaemenid Empire, recruited from across the known world based on merit. Dressed in rich colors and gold, carrying wicker shields and composite bows, they conquered from India to Egypt. They were the ones who finally broke the Spartan line at Thermopylae. However, their weakness was technology. Their wicker shields and short spears were useless against heavy Greek bronze and long pikes. At the Battle of Plataea, they were slaughtered. Alexander the Great later wiped them out completely. They taught history a harsh lesson: psychological warfare is powerful, but it cannot stop a longer spear. If the Spartans were warriors, the Romans were soldiers. The Roman legionary transformed Rome from a city-state into an empire that lasted 500 years. Serving for 25 years, these men were as much engineers as they were fighters. Armed with the short gladius sword and large scutum shield, they didn't just win battles, they built the infrastructure to hold the territory. They constructed roads, bridges, and forts every single night while on campaign. A legion of 5,000 men could defeat barbarian armies 10 times their size through discipline and the famous testudo tortoise formation. Julius Caesar conquered all of Gaul with just 8 legions. But their strength was also their undoing. Professional soldiers are expensive. When Rome's economy faltered, the legions fractured into private armies loyal only to their generals, tearing the empire apart from the inside. In the medieval Islamic armies, battles often began with a duel. The Mubarizan were elite champions whose sole purpose was to challenge enemy commanders to single combat. Before the main charge, a Mubarizan would ride out. Defeating an enemy champion could shatter the morale of an entire opposing army before the battle even truly began. At the Battle of Yarmouk, the legendary Khalid ibn al-Walid's champions decimated the Byzantine leadership. But honor has its limits, as warfare evolved. European armies stopped accepting duels and started using crossbows and longbows to snipe these champions from a distance. The age of the Mubarizan ended when war stopped being personal and started being industrial. Long before tanks, there were war elephants. Standing 3 meters tall and armored in metal, these beasts spread panic just by appearing on the battlefield. Used by Persians, Indians, and Carthaginians, they were psychological terror weapons. Hannibal famously crossed the Alps with 37 of them to terrify Rome. But elephants had a fatal flaw: they panicked. Fire or loud noises could cause them to trample their own troops. At the Battle of Zama, Scipio Africanus simply opened lanes in his ranks, letting the elephants charge through harmlessly. They proved that while raw power is terrifying, adaptability wins wars. From the mist of the North Sea came the Vikings. For nearly 300 years, they were the nightmare of Europe. Their advantage wasn't just their axes, but their long-shipped shallow-bottomed vessels that allowed them to strike anywhere, from open oceans to river towns deep inland. Among them were the berserkers, elite warriors who fought in a trance-like fury, possibly induced by rituals or hallucinogens. Feeling no pain, they would bite their own shields and charge without armor. Legend says at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, a single berserker held off the entire English army on a narrow bridge, killing 40 men before being taken down. But Vikings were raiders, not empire builders. As Scandinavia converted to Christianity, the berserkers were outlawed, and the Viking Age faded into history. There was, however, a Viking order that operated differently, the Jomsvikings. A mysterious mercenary brotherhood with a strict code. No fear, no retreat, and vengeance for fallen brothers was mandatory. Based in the legendary fortress of Jomsborg, they were the special forces of the Viking world. When captured, they didn't beg for mercy. Sagas describe Jomsvikings laughing as they were beheaded, staring their executioners in the eye. They disappeared mysteriously in the 12th century, but their legend inspired the knightly orders that followed. The Knights Templar were the shock troops of the Crusades. Highly trained, heavily armored, and fanatically disciplined, they were forbidden from retreating unless outnumbered 3-1. At the Battle of Mount Gizzard, 500 Templars helped defeat 26,000 of Saladin's troops. But they were also innovators. They created the world's first international banking system, allowing pilgrims to deposit money in Europe and withdraw it in Jerusalem. Their wealth became their downfall. The King of France, indebted to them, accused them of heresy. In 1307, the order was destroyed, and their Grand Master was burned at the stake, cursing the king and pope as he died. In feudal Japan, the samurai ruled for 700 years. Guided by Bushido, the way of the warrior, they valued honor above life itself. A samurai who was dishonored was expected to commit seppuku ritual suicide. They were masters of the sword and bow, repelling to Mongol invasions in the 13th century. But like the Spartans, they refused to change. In the late 19th century, the samurai led a rebellion against a modernizing Japanese government. At the Battle of Shirayama, traditional swords met modern Gatling guns. The age of the samurai ended in a hail of bullets, proving that tradition cannot defeat modernization. We end in the frozen forests of Finland, 1939. The Soviet Union invaded with 1 million men. Finland had just 300,000. But they had the White Death. Finnish snipers, dressed in white camouflage and using simple iron sight rifles, inflicted immense casualties on the invaders. The most famous, Simo Haihyu, confirmed over 500 kills in just 100 days. The Soviets lost nearly 700,000 men to the Finns' guerrilla tactics and the brutal cold. Though Finland eventually sued for peace, they remained independent, the only nation Stalin invaded but failed to conquer. From the shields of Sparta to the snows of Finland, history proves one thing: it is not the size of the army that matters, but the spirit of the warrior. If you enjoyed this tour of military history, don't forget to like and subscribe. Which unit would you want on your side? Let us know in the comments.